Good evening, everyone. Could everyone hear me at the back? Fantastic. Thank you so much to the Civic Society for inviting me to speak. Really delighted to be here as a representative of the Mudlarks community. I'm sure everyone here has heard of Mudlarks, but the Mudlarks community is a charity for people with learning disabilities and mental health concerns. And through that charity, we support over 160 people via a range of different initiatives that we offer, which I'll talk you through throughout this presentation. Speaking of the presentation, let me just walk you through what we're going to go through tonight. So I'm going to do some introductions of myself and also our founder, Vic, who isn't here, but I'll talk you through the story of how and why she founded Mudlarks. I'll talk you through Mudlarks' background and objectives as an organisation. I'll talk about our services, so how we deliver those objectives. And I'll also talk about our goals and challenges going forward, as well as how you can support the Mudlarks community going forward as well. But I'll start off by introducing myself. So I didn't actually used to do this. I found that I was going to do presentations and talks and talking about the charity I was representing. And at the end, somebody would say, what about you? Tell us about you. And then I realized, okay, maybe people actually want to hear a little bit about me. So I added this in. So my story as to how I got to this position and how I'm now the CEO of Mudlarks started when I was 18. I left school. When I left school, I had no GCSEs or A-levels. I flunked everything. I didn't pass anything. I was useless in education. But actually, it turns out that the reason I didn't excel at school, which is an understatement, is because I had some undiagnosed learning difficulties and learning disabilities. But when I did leave school, because I had no qualifications in the modern world, I also had no prospects unless I made them for myself. So what I did after school, without really knowing what I wanted to do, was I explored different opportunities and options in my area. I grew up in Essex, in a town called Redbridge, not too far from here, probably about 30 to 45 minutes if it's not rush hour. And there was a school for children with learning disabilities there, and they were advertising for some roles and some opportunities, and I applied to be a teaching assistant there, or what we would call a learning support assistant, and I got the job. And through that job, I found my true calling. I connected with all of the kids at the school. I found that they all responded really well to me. It gave me a sense of real passion and real purpose. And I felt after a period of time, this was something I wanted to explore in the long term. So I went back to college. I did something called an Access course, which is a one-year course which gives you GCSEs and A-levels and enables you to go to university. And I studied special and inclusive needs, which in real terms means I studied learning disabilities as a degree. While I was at university though, I started a small charity. And this charity was a volunteering charity, which basically campaigned for more students to volunteer in their local community on campus and around campus. And it was through that experience that my initial reason for going to university, which was because I wanted to teach in special education, somewhat changed my direction. I started to consider maybe the direction I'm going in is a career in the charity sector. And after I finished my degree, that's precisely the direction that I ended up going in. I climbed the ladder through multiple different charities that I worked for until I was a director at a youth charity. And then I spent 3 years running a Jewish youth organisation. And the context of that role was that the charity was on the verge of collapse. It was very much a case of, it was an opportunity to take my first CEO role, but I knew it was a little bit of a gamble because if the charity continued in the direction it was going in, I was going to lead it to insolvency. So the job was turn it around and hopefully it will help me in the long term as well. And obviously I'll make an amazing impact, hopefully, whilst doing it. And that's what happened. After 3 years, the charity's fortunes were turned around. But I also knew that because of the size and scale of the charity and the funding models, this wasn't going to be something that I would be able to do for 5, 10, 15 years, even though I absolutely loved that job. And then my wife, who I married in June last year, she told me that she was pregnant, and I realised, okay, I probably need to fast track leaving this job and finding something slightly more realistic where I will actually be able to see my child. And I started at Mudlarks 5 months ago, had a baby 3 months ago, 11 weeks ago today, in fact. And last night wasn't a good night. So if I'm slurring my words, you know what? And actually, we have managed to establish a little bit of a routine. Me and my wife have got a system whereby she goes to bed about 9 o'clock. I try to get Ella, which is the name of our daughter, down to sleep for roughly about 10, maybe 11 o'clock. I then wake her up for a dream feed, if any of you have heard of that, about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. I go to sleep and sleep until about 7 or 8. And my wife wakes up about 5 or 6 in the morning, which is when Ella wakes up. So we've managed to establish a system whereby we're both getting sort of between 5 and 7 hours. Unless, of course, Ella decides, I'm not having it. I'm not having this. I'm not interested in your routine tonight or your plan. I've decided I want to stay up. And that's what she did last night. So about 12:30, she was still awake. And neither of us had gone to sleep yet. So it was a bit of a disaster. And I'm feeling it this morning because the dream feed was at 3 a.m. because we had to push it back. But anyway, I'm here and I'm talking, so it couldn't have been too bad. My passion, the reason I took over at Mudlarks is because I have a strong interest in helping people of a variety of different backgrounds and circumstances try to help them fulfill their potential. And that is a huge part of what Mudlarks is, and it was a fantastic fit, and I'm really enjoying it so far. But let me talk a little bit about Mudlarks. So, Mudlarks, the Mudlarks community, which at the time was called Mudlarks Garden, was founded in 2009 by a lady called Victoria Hobson, or who many of you probably know as Vic, who I think has got the Freedom of Hartford. So you probably all know her, or know of her, or know someone who she knows. But she founded it in 2009, and the original reason why she founded it was because she was actually a teacher in special education. And what she found frustrating, which is a frustration that I can really relate to, is that legally, young people up to the age of 18 have to be in education, training, etc. But after the age of 18, there isn't necessarily a legal requirement for you to be in work, and as a result, provision for people with learning disabilities just falls off a cliff. So they finish school if they're in special education, and then they're on their own. They have to try and find provision. And there are a lot of social opportunities out there in Hertford, around Hertford and across Hertfordshire. But Vic wanted to create an initiative that gave people with learning disabilities who are finishing school something a little bit more purposeful, something that would give them an opportunity to learn skills, be part of a community, build some confidence, and feel a part of something much bigger. So she decided to work with the local authority to pick up some allotment space on Cromwell Road in Hertford. My understanding is that it was not easy to convince the local authority for us to have that land, but she fought a fantastic fight and she got it. Now, when I first started at Mudlarks, I actually assumed that Vic initially picked up a small portion of that allotment land, and then once the model of what she wanted to do was proven, picked up more land. But it turns out, I found out a few weeks after I started, that wasn't the case. She got the whole lot in one go because she clearly believed that this was a really important cause and purpose. So she started it in 2009, initially with the allotment, and over the course of many years, it's grown into multiple different initiatives, which I'll talk through. Today, we support over 160 people in a variety of different initiatives. We welcome anyone who is an adult with learning disability or with a mental health concern, or anyone who might want to volunteer for any reason whatsoever. And ultimately, our ethos is that we celebrate difference. We champion everyone. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to play a key role in their local community, has an opportunity to have a sense of self-belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. So let's talk through the different initiatives. So Mudlarks allotment was the original initiative that Mudlarks started with. And through the allotment, we have around 90 gardeners every week. Gardeners is what we refer to as our clients, people with learning disabilities and mental health concerns who come down to the allotment for the day. We refer to them as gardeners because that's what they are gardeners. And they engage in a variety of different opportunities to learn and engage in horticultural therapy across the whole of the site. And I'll talk through that in a bit more detail. So there's lots of different things they can do at the allotment, from seed sowing, watering, planting. They grow their own vegetables on their own bed. They grow vegetables for our cafe. They grow flowers for our cafe. They grow flowers for the local community. So there's so much that happens at the allotment that gives our gardeners a real sense of purpose. And also, what's really important to our gardeners is the fact that there is a wider journey connected to it. It's not just a case of growing vegetables for the sake of growing them or growing flowers for the sake of growing them. There is a journey connected to it. If they're growing vegetables on their own bed, they can take them home and eat it with their families. If they're growing vegetables for the cafe, they know that's going to the cafe to be bought and consumed by members of the Hertford community. If they're growing flowers, they know it might be sold or used in different initiatives across Hertford or used on our cafes. Because if you've been to our cafe, you've probably seen there's flowers on the table. They're grown at the allotment and they're refreshed every week. Each session provides something new and interesting. And what I love about this slide is that the allotment operates 51 weeks of the year. The only week of the year that we're not operating is the week of Christmas and Boxing Day. And you can see the evidence of that from that photo over there, covered in snow. Now, the only thing that stops us from operating, or the only thing that might cause us to write to our gardeners, parents or carers, sorry, please don't come today, is if the local authority tell us that it's not safe for you to operate, in the same way they might tell a local school, cancel school for the day, it's not safe. So we received the same kind of advice. However, as you can see, it takes some pretty extreme weather for us to resort to that. And even if the weather is pretty extreme, there's other things our gardeners can get involved in as well around the community. It's not just our allotment. We also have chickens on the plot, and actually this slide is really sad because as of a few weeks ago, our last chicken passed away. Which is really, really sad because the gardeners absolutely love helping to support them, keep them fed, look after them, but we are going to get more chickens. We're looking into getting more chickens at the moment. So I'm now going to tell you about another one of our horticultural initiatives, which is called Larking About. So have any of you ever been to Hertford Castle and seen Mudlarks, gardeners and staff there doing some work? That is because through a contract with Hertford Town Council, we have got contracts across the Hertford community to maintain a lot of the public land, including the castle, which is an enormous plot of gardening space, and we are working on upgrading it and maintaining it throughout the year. So the way it basically works is that our Larking About manager, who's a lady called Julie, who's amazing with our gardeners, reports to the allotment of a morning. Our gardeners report to the allotment of a morning. And some of our more able gardeners who are looking to gain more experience and more social engagement by going out and about, such as by going on Larking About, might go with Julie to do some of the gardening at the castle or some of the other places which I'll talk you through now. So as I said, Hertford Town Council Gardens is just one of the places that Larking About maintains and operates. We also maintain the Jubilee Gardens, which are absolutely beautiful, I'm sure you'll agree. Also St Leonard's Garden. And we also maintain Hertford East Station, the bedding there. So in actual fact, we actually recently got an email from Hertford East Station, so we'll probably be upgrading it fairly soon. So if you've been past it recently and feel like it looks a bit gloomy, give us a few weeks and it will look a bit better. So that's Larking About. Now I'm going to tell you about a different initiative, which is similar to Larking About, but a little bit different, called Special Branch. So special branch, which is the name of this particular horticultural outreach program, was born out of an idea that Vic had around how we can, through interacting with our gardeners and our gardeners visiting people in the community, how we can help with a problem that is a big problem across the UK, which is loneliness. There are a lot of elderly people or vulnerable people in Hertford who either might be at high risk of loneliness or experience loneliness, or maybe they aren't able to maintain their own garden. So Vic came up with the idea of a project of what if we had a special branch manager who goes out with gardeners and visits them, maintains their gardens, has a cup of tea, keeps them company a little bit, making an impact on those people who are being visited and also helping to maintain the gardens, thus also giving our gardeners the opportunity to learn the skills that will come with that opportunity. And it works fantastically. It's a really successful initiative. Yeah, it's a fantastic initiative, really successful. So the next one that I'm going to talk about is our polytunnels. So this is our newest initiative. So you probably all know Haileybury School. It's quite hard to miss. It's rather large. So Vic had some contacts at Haileybury. We were aware that they had a number of thoughts and ideas and also obligations related to social action and supporting the local community. And they wanted to work with us. But we also had the idea of installing a couple of polytunnels somewhere in Hertford so we could grow produce a little bit more easily and accessibly year round for the cafe, but also use that as a vehicle to teach our gardeners a more technical level of experience in relation to horticulture, which could hopefully lead to more employment opportunities, training opportunities for them. They opened last year. We have a new polytunnels manager who started with us a few months ago, and it's going really well. The gardeners absolutely love going there. We have a fantastic relationship with Haileybury School, and as far as we're concerned, they are there for the long term, and we can see it being a big part of Mudlarks' future. So now we come on to a different part of the organisation, obviously linked to our horticulture projects, but a totally different part of the organisation, which is the Mudlarks Cafe, which I refer to as our social enterprise arm of the organisation. So, by show of hands, who's been to the Mudlarks Cafe? That is precisely what I wanted to hear. So this segment could be very short because you don't need to hear too much about it, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. So the Mudlarks Cafe is a vegetarian and vegan cafe that uses produce from our allotment and also our polytunnels to create a variety of different recipes that we serve to the local community. It's open from 9 until 4:30 between Tuesday and Saturday, and it is a huge success story for the Mudlarks community and also Hertford, which I hope you agree. We are getting roughly about 500 customers per week come to the cafe, but really the fantastic thing about the cafe is that the large majority of people we employ have learning disabilities or a mental health concern. And using the cafe as a vehicle, we are providing those people with training opportunities in, with training opportunities in the hospitality sector that gives them long-term prospects that they could potentially pursue outside of Mudlarks. But it's a little bit more than that as well. It's allowing them to learn a variety of different social skills, soft skills, practical skills, confidence, a sense of purpose that you really can't put a price on. And finally, in terms of our last initiative, is our forest school. So the forest school opened in 2018. The idea of the forest school was to partner up with special needs schools across Hertford and beyond to give school pupils an opportunity to experience a different learning environment. Now, I used to work in a school for kids with learning disabilities, and it is a really challenging environment for them. It's a real sensory overload. It's a very structured, kind of rigid environment and process. The national curriculum is not particularly flexible. And by offering them the opportunity to spend a couple of hours a week to come down to the forest school is a massive source of relief for them. It has fantastic benefits in relation to their regulation, in relation to their confidence, to their mental well-being. It is an incredible resource for them. It's also something that is offered to many of our gardeners as well. So if somebody would like to come to the forest school and they're already engaged in Mudlarks, or we receive a referral for somebody with learning disabilities and we think they might benefit from the forest school, individuals go there as part of local authority funding as well. The whole idea behind the forest school is that it is self-directed play. Now, we always have a session plan for our participants. However, the most important thing is that this is for them to get out of it whatever they want. And it is, as a result of that, completely self-directed. So if they arrive and they want to engage in the session, they can do that. And we'll encourage them to do that. But if they want to go on a nature walk, or take a look at something over there, or have a lay down on the hammock, or sit on a log and just take in the natural environment, then we encourage them and allow them to do that. And that is one of the reasons why it has such great benefits for them, that is totally different from what they get out of a school environment. So this is one of our gardeners, and it's just one testimony. To be honest, we could have put 100 testimonies up here, because everyone who's engaged in Mudlarks, even as a volunteer, is getting a huge amount out of being part of the community. But this is one particular gardener who does have a learning disability, but has also really struggled over the years with his mental health. And he says, I was at rock bottom, then I started working at Mudlarks Garden. It gave me purpose. I no longer dreaded waking up, and the sheer physical activity felt good. I learnt to laugh again, and I have hope. At Mudlarks, I'm part of something not defined in mental health terms. I'm a gardener. And that really epitomises how a lot of our gardeners feel. To them, when they come to the allotment, they're going to work. And one of the reasons they feel that is because of how we treat them, and because they know what the wider journey is. They're coming to the allotment to help us grow produce, which then contributes to the cafe, contributes to the local economy, contributes to the local community. It is not just activity for the sake of activity. It is much bigger than that, particularly from our gardener's perspective. Mudlarks has over 60 dedicated volunteers. Mudlarks is a voluntary organisation. We do have lots of professional staff. We employ, across the entire charity, over 40 people. But we have over 60 volunteers. So we actually have more volunteers than we do professional staff, and we simply wouldn't be able to do what we do, deliver the work that we deliver, and have the same level of impact to anywhere near the extent that we do without our volunteers. And our volunteers all have a really crucial role within the charity. They're not just there to play subsidiary roles. They are working directly with gardeners, with cafe assistants, with all of our beneficiaries. They are working at our allotments and our cafe to help them operate properly, to help them operate successfully. And broadly, they are having every bit of as much of an impact, if not more of an impact, on our gardeners and cafe assistants as much as the staff are. They play a huge role in the charity. So let me talk about funding and where our funding comes from. So Mudlarks funding is effectively divided into 3 thirds. We get a third of our funding from the county council. Now, the way that works is that somebody with a learning disability, or maybe a mental health concern, who requires provision and has a diagnosed learning disability, has gone through the assessment process with the local authority and is eligible to receive funding, they can use that funding to fund different provision that they can attend. And when they attend Mudlarks allotment, or sometimes the cafe, but most of them are employed, we receive that funding so we can pay our staff, so we can fulfill our operational costs, etc., etc. And that's where a third of our funding comes from. Another third of the funding comes from the cafe. So it's a consumer-facing cafe. When you pay for something, it contributes to the organisation, and that's where about a third of our funds come from. And the final third comes from a range of different fundraising initiatives. It could be grants, which contributes around 20%, and the other 10% comes from donations, community fundraising, charity of the year initiatives that different organisations might decide to pick Mudlarks for, that kind of stuff. We receive huge amounts of support from the local community, but it is a really, really challenging time for Mudlarks and all charities of around a small to medium size. For every 10 grant applications that I might do, I'm lucky if I get one of those grants. It is getting more and more difficult as every year passes because there are more and more charities that require funding from grant organisations because getting funding is a struggle. And that competitive landscape is making it harder for charities, including Mudlarks, to operate in the long term. And because grants are becoming more and more difficult, we're getting less and less from grants probably every year, we are relying more and more on fundraising, on donations, and we're having to get more creative as every year passes. So, where is Mudlarks as an organisation strategically? So we've actually just finished a 3-year strategy, as in we've just come to the end of a 3-year cycle which had an established strategy, which was the 2022 to 2025 strategy, which was essentially Vic's final strategy before she walked away, before she retired and went on her travels and handed the charity over. And there were a number of key outcomes from that 3-year strategy, and I'll just walk you through a few examples. So we are providing high-level support opportunities and pathways for over 160 people. That's more than we had 3 years ago, so we have grown. We've expanded the placements through the cafe, through the horticultural projects and through the forest school as well. So by growing those projects or introducing more projects, we're able to expand the impact that we're having. The Polytunnels project is a good example of that. Back when the Woodland Centre, which is what the forest school is, opened in 2018, it was actually initially ran by Vic because it had no funding. But because we were able to get funding for that, the initiative grew. And we were able to offer it, to more people. And we've also established more schools and colleges that are involved in Mudlarks, again, to expand our impact. Now, there's loads of other outcomes that were achieved in those 3 years. That's just a few examples. I mean, I could talk about the compost toilet at the allotment, which was one thing that was installed and cost about £15,000, would you believe? And there's countless examples of things that were achieved in the last 3 years. The Mudlarks community has come a long way. But what about the future? So the truth is, I've been the CEO for coming up to 5 months. What date is it today?
Wednesday.
No, date.
22nd of October.
22nd, so 2 days ago, 5 months. 5 months is nothing, especially when you parachute a baby in the middle of it. 5 months is not very long. So the truth is, the Mudlarks community has not yet established what our long-term strategy is from a, let's call it a formal standpoint. But we do know what direction we want to go in, and we have lots of ideas for the future. And I want to just take a few moments to explain where we might be going. So what is the absolute priority over anything is sustainability. We have got 6 initiatives that we are currently running, and we are having an impact on over 160 people with learning disabilities and mental health concerns. But I would also argue that we're having an enormous impact on our volunteers, on our members of staff, on the local community. So our indirect impact, we're talking in the hundreds or maybe even thousands. My first priority is to make sure that in a year, 5 years, 10 years, those 6 initiatives are still going strong and we are able to have the same level of impact, if not more impact, through those 6 initiatives. That is priority number 1. We want to continue to meet the needs of people with learning disabilities and mental health concerns in our community. We're looking to introduce new initiatives for the cafe to increase our income. Now, that's actually one of our top priorities. So something that maybe not many people may not be aware of is that the cafe actually makes a loss every month, which may seem unbelievable because it's always pretty busy. If you're in the cafe before about 11:30, I wouldn't say it's quiet, but it's not bustling. Every table may not be filled. But if you're in there between 12 and 2, particularly 12:30 and 1:30, you'll be lucky to get a table. So why are we not breaking even every month? And the answer is relatively simple. It's because the purpose of the cafe is not to make a profit. The purpose of the cafe is to provide as many people with learning disabilities with an employment opportunity as possible. If you go into a commercial cafe, they won't have anywhere near as many members of staff that we have because they'll only employ what they need because their purpose is to make a profit at the end of the month. So it's not a commercial outfit. So we are losing, it could be anything between £2,000 to £9,000 per month. And my job is to fundraise to plug that gap. And one of the ways that we want to do that is by introducing new initiatives for the cafe, by which I mean more items on the menu. So we're selling more food during points of the day where we're not doing as well as we could be. So before 10 a.m, we're not taking a huge amount of money, and after 3 p.m, we're not taking a huge amount of money. So a couple of initiatives that we're looking at is a breakfast meal deal for the morning to appeal to the local community. So we're achieving more sales during the breakfast period of the day. And between 3 and 4, doing discounts on particular drinks, whether it's orange juice or milkshakes or smoothies or whatever it may well be, having a happy hour for those kind of things. And there's lots of different ideas to go with that. We're also looking at what items can we take from the allotment to sell in the cafe. So at some point over the next few months, you might find that on the left, as you go into the cafe, there might be some shelves that appear. There might be some shelves that also appear just above the counter because we're looking to sell more produce. And we might find ourselves having a Veg of the Week initiative where this week we're selling packets of tomatoes that you can buy and take home that were all grown at our allotment. Or we might also be looking to sell our granola because one of the things that we've had by way of feedback is that our granola is lovely. Would you be willing to sell it in packets? That's something we're looking at. And the idea behind all of this is because we are looking to increase the sales for the cafe to plug that funding gap. We are looking to also increase our fundraising income by engaging local businesses and charities for corporate sponsorships and volunteering initiatives. So we are looking to engage local businesses to encourage them to pick Mudlarks as their charity of the year, or encourage them to just make a donation to Mudlarks as a corporate sponsor. We're also looking to work with organisations to potentially engage them in corporate volunteering, which is something that's becoming bigger and bigger as every year goes on for a lot of charities, whereby businesses, profit organisations might say, as a team building exercise, we might engage in a local service for several members of our team to go along every day. And actually, companies are willing to spend a fair bit of money on that kind of thing. So that's something else that we're looking at. We're also looking at introducing a new volunteering campaign. So Mudlarks has got some amazing volunteers, but actually the large majority of our volunteers have joined us through word of mouth. We are actually looking to launch a marketing campaign to advertise to the Hertford community that we are actively looking for volunteers. These are the roles that we're looking for. This is the kind of impact you can make. Please join us as a volunteer and join our community. We're also looking at digital initiatives. So something that we are really interested in exploring is digital content. So I don't know if anyone saw a program on ITV in the last few months called The Assembly. But The program was basically centered on people with learning disabilities interviewing celebrities, and it was like a no holds barred, asking them whatever they want. And I'm not suggesting that Mudlarks is going to have celebrities coming to the cafe to be interviewed and probably offended by what they might be asked. But I think what we can learn from that, and what we can learn from the existing digital content that we produce, is that hearing from our gardeners and our cafe assistants is very, very engaging and very interesting. And if we can create digital content, whether it's podcasts or YouTube videos or TikToks, if anyone uses TikTok, I do not. I think it's ruining young people's lives, but that's a different matter. We know that if we can create content that might be from our gardeners talking about what they've learned about gardening and what they can teach the community about gardening, that is the type of content that we think could be very engaging and could also be commercialized relatively easily, because if it's successful and gets a lot of views, then it could lead to sponsorship or payments from the actual digital companies themselves. And we're also looking at new programs that we might introduce in the future around things like mentoring, independent schemes, employer training, that kind of stuff. And one of the reasons, by the way, just as an example, the employer training is something we're looking at, is because if you go onto most corporate organizations' website and you look at their inclusion policy, they'll probably say that they're very inclusive. But in practice, if they were to try employing people who are autistic or have ADHD or have Down syndrome, would they really know how to support them? Would they really know how to work with them? And from my professional experience, the answer to that is no, they don't really know what they're doing. So there's potentially a role for Mudlarks and similar organisations to play in helping those organisations understand how do we support them and how do we make this work so they can contribute to society through the employment opportunities that they could potentially offer. So what's down the line? What are the threats that are keeping me awake at night and keeping anyone who's a fan of Mudlarks potentially worried? So one of the things that I'm wary of is the funding for our gardeners. So if you watch the news or if you're politically engaged, you'll know that the welfare state is something that is constantly being discussed. And ultimately, one of the reasons why we're able to offer the services that we're offered is because our gardeners are getting funding through the welfare state, which is coming through the local authority, but is ultimately a welfare state initiative. If there are cuts down the line, we could be affected by that. And ultimately, if there are cuts, it does have a very direct impact on the individual gardeners and potentially cafe assistants as well. Because if their funding is cut, they may not be able to fund their position at Mudlarks unless we give it away for free. But the problem with that is that we have got financial obligations. So it's never quite as simple as that. So that is something that we are concerned about down the line and is to a degree already affecting us. Because some of our gardeners who might, if you meet them and have a chat with them, and you might think, oh, that person's really independent and able. The local authority are possibly looking at them and thinking, you should go down to the job centre. But we know from our experience that it's never as simple as that. So it's already something that is affecting us. Cafe competition is an ongoing threat to the Mudlarks community because of the Mudlarks Cafe. So if other cafes and businesses open that steal our customers or our customers want to try out, it potentially affects the business at the cafe and our income could drop, which might have an impact on whether or not the cafe can stay open. And that is a threat. The changing grant landscape is a massive challenge. I've already touched on that. But as I said, for every 10 grant applications I'm doing, I'm lucky if I'm successful in one. Community knowledge and understanding of learning disabilities is an ongoing threat. But one of the reasons it's a threat is because of what I've already touched on, which is that people come into Mudlarks to learn skills and gain experience and gain training. But is there genuinely an open, inclusive attitude and ethos within society to be willing to give them the opportunities so they can actually move on from Mudlarks? The answer is, it can definitely be better, and I think it is a threat. And something that also may have an impact on mudlarks in the long term is the impact from climate change. And last year was a good example of that because the weather in 2024 was horrendous and our costs were really affected by that because we had to pay for repairs, we had to pay to replant, to do lots of different things to maintain the allotment that we wouldn't usually have to do if the weather wasn't such harsh in its condition. And that is a threat because if it gets worse, if it gets colder, it will be much harder to provide our gardeners with opportunities that have genuine meaning because there'll be so much damage and there'll be so much stifling of the growth of our vegetables and of our produce. Okay, so I've been talking a lot at you guys, and maybe you'll have questions, maybe you won't. But let me talk to you about how you can support the Mudlarks community. So the best way, or one of the ways you can support us, is by making a donation to the Mudlarks community. So to do that, if you visit www.mudlarksgarden.org.uk, there's a donate button in the top right-hand corner. Now, why should you donate to the Mudlarks community? There's lots of reasons. I've talked through a lot of them. But we are at a really challenging moment because of grants, because we're finding them hard to get. Our income this year is at a major threat, which could have a significant impact on the places that we're able to offer. In addition to that, the costs to run our cafe have just gone up. Our rent's just gone up by £5,000 per year, which our landlord is able to do because that's the terms of the lease. But that makes it harder for the Mudlarks Cafe to stay open in the long term. So we are seeking support from the Hertford community by way of donations. And hopefully you'll be open to having a look and making a donation. You can also volunteer for Mudlarks. If you're interested in volunteering, let me know before I go, and I'm very happy to give you my email address, or you can just visit our website, our contact details are there, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation with you about volunteering. You can visit our cafe, which I'm sure you will do, and be a customer. Follow us on social media, so if you're on Instagram or on Facebook, look for Mudlarks Garden, follow us there. We're always providing great content. And you could also attend our events, so keep an eye on our social media platforms and attend any of our events that we're promoting for. Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Just one more thing, which is that I'm in the cafe all the time. I don't know if any of you have seen me in the cafe before, but I'm coming and going from the cafe all the time. If you are in there, please do come over and introduce yourself. I'm always happy to have a chat. Don't be a stranger. And if you do think of any questions you have after, feel free to email the Civic Society and they can forward it on to me. But thank you very much for your time. Really pleased to be here tonight. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you around Hertford and in the cafe. Thank you.